To my son's first marriage, may it teach him what he really wants. Gloria Ashworth raised her champagne glass toward the head table, her white Vera Wang gown catching the light of the crystal chandeliers. 200 guests turned to stare at me, the bride, and I watched my new husband smile nervously at his mother instead of defending me. But here's what Gloria didn't understand. I had grown up with nothing, fought for everything, and the woman she dismissed as temporary was about to become the most permanent problem of her privileged life. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of this community. My name is Natalie Vance. Well, it's Natalie Vance again. I took my maiden name back. I'm 38 years old. And this is the story of how I survived 10 years of marriage to a man who never chose me, built an empire while everyone underestimated me, and walked away with everything his mother thought I didn't deserve. Let me start at the beginning. I met Jonathan Ashworth at a coffee shop in Manhattan in 2012. I was 24 years old, working as a junior account manager at a mid-sized marketing firm, living in a studio apartment in Queens with a roommate and approximately $47,000 in student loan debt. He was 28, working at his family's investment firm, living in a brownstone on the Upper East Side that his parents had given him as a graduation gift. We were from different worlds. I knew that from the first conversation, but Jonathan was charming. He was handsome in that effortless old money way, good bone structure, easy smile, clothes that fit perfectly because they were tailored specifically for him. He asked me questions about my life like he genuinely wanted to know the answers. He didn't flinch when I told him I was from a small town in rural Pennsylvania, that my father had worked at a steel mill until it closed, that my mother cleaned houses to pay for my college applications. That's incredible, he said. You built yourself from scratch. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done. I should have listened more carefully. He said it takes courage, not that he admired it. Not that he valued it. Just that it was something he had observed, like a nature documentary about an unfamiliar species. But I was 24 and I was lonely and he was looking at me like I was special. So I fell in love with the version of Jonathan Ashworth that existed in coffee shops and restaurants and the front seat of his BMW. The version that existed before I met his family. I met Gloria Ashworth 6 months into our relationship. Jonathan had warned me that his mother was particular. He said she had high standards. He said she could be a bit much, but that she meant well. All of these were lies. We had dinner at the Ashworth family home in Greenwich, Connecticut, a 12-bedroom estate with a name. Willowbrook. The house had a name, like it was a character in a novel about people who had never worried about money. Gloria greeted me at the door in a cream-colored silk blouse and perfectly pressed slacks. Her hair was silver blonde, her makeup flawless, her handshake approximately 2 degrees below room temperature. So you're Natalie, she said, looking me up and down. Jonathan has told me very little about you. She said it like an accusation. Like I had forced her son to be secretive. The dinner was an interrogation. What did my father do? Where had I gone to school? What were my people like? I answered every question honestly. The steel mill, Penn State, a small family that worked hard and loved harder. Gloria's smile grew thinner with every answer. After dessert, while Jonathan was in the bathroom, she cornered me in the parlor. Let me be direct with you, Natalie. I can see that you're a nice girl. Pretty, in an ordinary sort of way. Ambitious, clearly. But Jonathan is going to inherit a significant amount of money and responsibility. He needs a partner who understands our world. Someone who was raised in it. Someone who can navigate it without embarrassing him. She paused, letting the words sink in. You seem like a lovely starter girlfriend. But let's not pretend this is going anywhere serious. I should have walked out. I should have called a cab and never looked back. But I was 24 years old and I loved her son and I believed, stupidly, naively, that I could prove her wrong. I respect your honesty, Mrs. Ashworth, I said. But Jonathan gets to decide who he wants to be with. Not you. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. We'll see. Jonathan proposed 18 months later. He did it on a rooftop in Manhattan, with the city lights spread out below us and a 3-carat diamond ring that I later learned his mother had tried to talk him out of buying. "She'll come around," he promised me. "Once she sees how happy you make me, she'll accept you." I believed him. That was my first mistake. The wedding was held at Willowbrook, because Gloria insisted. The guest list was 200 people, because Gloria insisted. The color scheme, the flowers, the menu, the band, all Gloria. My mother was allowed to invite 12 guests from our side. 12. For a wedding of 200 people. "It's just logistics," Jonathan said when I complained. "The estate can only hold so many people comfortably." I noticed he didn't say, "our estate." It was always, "the estate," like it was a separate entity that made its own decisions. That I should have paid more attention to that. On the morning of the wedding, my maid of honor, my best friend Lauren, who had driven 6 hours from Pennsylvania to be there, came into the bridal suite with a look on her face that I will never forget. "Natalie. There's something you need to know." "What?" "Gloria is wearing white." I didn't believe her at first. I walked to the window and looked down at the garden where guests were arriving. And there she was, Gloria Ashworth, mother of the groom, in a floor-length white Vera Wang gown that was more bridal than my actual wedding dress. She saw me watching. She smiled and waved. "I'm going to say something to her," Lauren said. "No." I took a deep breath. "That's what she wants. She wants me to make a scene. She wants to prove that I'm not classy enough for her family. Natalie, I'm going to marry Jonathan. I'm going to smile. And I'm going to pretend that his mother didn't just declare war on me at my own wedding." That was my second mistake. The ceremony was beautiful. Jonathan cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. His vows were eloquent and seemingly heartfelt. For 45 minutes, I allowed myself to believe that everything would be okay. Then came the reception. Gloria stood up during the toasts, after Jonathan's best man had given a perfectly acceptable speech about college memories and brotherhood. She wasn't on the schedule to speak. She simply stood and took the microphone. "I want to say a few words about my son's bride." The room went quiet. I could feel my mother's hand gripping mine under the table. "Jonathan has always been a romantic. Even as a boy, he fell in love easily, with stray dogs, with injured birds, with any creature that seemed to need saving." She paused, looking directly at me. "Natalie is his latest project. A pretty girl from a small town who needed a knight in shining armor. And my son, bless his heart, has always wanted to be that knight." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I felt my face flush. "But here's what I've learned about my son. He has a big heart, but he also has a short attention span. He adopts the stray dog, and then he gets bored. He nurses the bird back to health, and then he sets it free." She raised her glass. "So I'd like to propose a toast. To my son's first marriage. To the starter wife. May she teach him what he really wants, so that next time, he chooses someone more suitable." She drank. 200 people drank with her, because what else could they do? I turned to Jonathan. My husband of 2 hours. The man who had promised to love and protect me. He was smiling weakly at his mother. Not angry. Not horrified. Just embarrassed. The way you might be embarrassed if your mother told an inappropriate joke at dinner. "I'll talk to her," he whispered. "You should have talked to her before she called me a starter wife in front of everyone we know. Natalie, please. Don't make this bigger than it is. She's just being dramatic. You know how she gets." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since we'd met. I saw his mother's cheekbones. His mother's casual cruelty. His mother's assumption that the world would rearrange itself around his comfort. That I should have walked out right then. But I was 26 years old, and I had just signed a marriage certificate, and 200 people were watching, and my mother had spent her life savings on her dress. So I stayed. That was my third mistake. But it was also the beginning of my education. For the next 10 years, I learned what it meant to be married to a man who had never been required to choose. Jonathan didn't choose between his mother and me. He simply existed in the space between us, accepting her cruelty and my pain as equally valid positions in a debate he refused to engage with. When Gloria criticized my cooking at family dinners, Jonathan said nothing. When Gloria, accidentally, scheduled her annual garden party on my birthday 3 years in a row, Jonathan said nothing. When Gloria told our friends that I had trapped Jonathan with an unplanned pregnancy, a lie, our daughter was very much planned, Jonathan said nothing. When Gloria suggested that perhaps I should stay home with the children instead of playing businesswoman, Jonathan said nothing. Always nothing. Always silence. Always that same weak smile and the promise that he would talk to her later. He never talked to her. Or if he did, it never made any difference. The worst moment came on our 3rd anniversary that I had planned a special dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. I had arranged for a babysitter. Madeline was just 6 months old, and I had bought a new dress. Something elegant, something that made me feel beautiful despite the baby weight I was still carrying. Jonathan was supposed to meet me at 7. At 7:15, he texted, running late. Mother needed help with something. At 8 o'clock, he texted, almost done. Order without me. At 9:30, he walked in, still wearing his golf clothes, smelling like cigar smoke and bourbon. Sorry, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Mother's charity auction is next week and she needed me to look at the seating arrangements. You know how she gets about these things. I had been sitting alone in that restaurant for 2.5 hours. The waitstaff had started giving me pitying looks. A couple at the next table had been whispering about me. It's our anniversary, Jonathan. I know. I'm sorry. But I'm here now, right? Let's order. He picked up the menu like nothing had happened. Like leaving his wife alone on their anniversary to help his mother arrange chairs was perfectly normal behavior. I should have left him that night. But Madeline was 6 months old, and I was exhausted, and I told myself that marriage required sacrifice. What I didn't understand then was that sacrifice is supposed to go both ways. There were good moments, I won't pretend there weren't. Jonathan could be sweet when his mother wasn't around. He was gentle with Madeline, patient with her crying and her messes. On the rare weekends when we escaped to our apartment in Manhattan, away from Greenwich, away from Gloria, away from the constant performance of being an Ashworth, he almost seemed like the man I had fallen in love with, but those moments became rarer and rarer. Gloria had a gravitational pull that Jonathan could never escape. Every decision we made as a couple somehow became a family discussion. Every holiday was spent at Willowbrook. Every major purchase required her approval. When I wanted to buy a car, a practical SUV for the baby, Gloria insisted we get a Range Rover instead. Ashworths don't drive Toyotas, Natalie. When I wanted to send Madeline to a Montessori preschool near our apartment, Gloria enrolled her at a private academy in Greenwich without asking us. She needs to make the right connections from the beginning. When I suggested that maybe, just maybe, we could spend one Christmas with my family in Pennsylvania, Gloria scheduled a mandatory Ashworth family portrait session for December 25th, and every single time, Jonathan sided with his mother. Not aggressively, he was never aggressive. Just passively. Quietly. With that same weak smile and that same shrug and that same unspoken message, this is just how things are. But here's what Gloria Ashworth didn't understand about me: I was not a stray dog. I was not an injured bird. I was a woman who had grown up with nothing, and nothing teaches you how to survive. My father worked the steel mill for 32 years. He came home with aching bones and calloused hands and he never complained. My mother cleaned other people's houses so that I could have piano lessons and SAT prep books. They taught me that work has dignity. That struggle builds character. That the only thing anyone can take from you is what you let them take. Gloria thought my background was a weakness. She was wrong. It was my greatest strength. While my marriage slowly suffocated me, I built a career. It started small. After our daughter Madeline was born in 2017, I started a side business, a boutique marketing consultancy focused on women-owned businesses. Gloria thought it was adorable. Natalie's little hobby, she called it. Jonathan was supportive in a vague, disinterested way, the way you might support a child's lemonade stand, but my little hobby grew. Within 2 years, I had 10 clients. Within 3 years, I had a staff of 5. Within 5 years, I had an office in Manhattan, 30 employees, and revenue of $8 million. I called the company Vance and Associates. Not Ashworth. My name. The name I had been born with, the name my father had carried into the steel mill every morning, the name that Gloria had never bothered to learn. The early years were brutal. I would put the children to bed at 8, then work until 2 in the morning. I took calls during Oliver's nap time. I pitched clients from the parking lot of Madeline's ballet class. I built a team of women who understood what it meant to fight for recognition in a world that constantly underestimated us. My first major client was a female-founded tech startup that had been rejected by 12 marketing agencies before they found me. The founder, a woman named Priya, told me that she chose Vance and Associates because I was the only one who actually listened to what she wanted instead of telling her what she needed. The big agencies kept trying to soften our message, Priya said. They wanted us to be less aggressive, less confident, less ourselves. You were the first person who said our message was perfect and we just needed to amplify it. We tripled her company's revenue in 18 months. She referred us to 4 other founders. Those founders referred us to others. Word spread. By 2022, Vance and Associates had been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, and the Wall Street Journal. We had expanded into brand strategy, digital transformation, and executive coaching. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies that Gloria's social circle desperately wanted to impress. That I was worth, on paper, approximately $40 million, and my husband had no idea. Oh, he knew I had a business. He knew I went to an office every day while the nanny watched our children, Madeline, and her younger brother, Oliver. He knew I traveled sometimes for work, and that I had employees, and that I seemed busy. But Jonathan Ashworth had never once asked me about revenue. About growth. About valuation. He had never attended a single company event. He had never read a single article about my success, because in his mind, in his mother's mind, I was still the starter wife. Still the stray dog. Still the injured bird that would eventually be set free. They were right about one thing, I was going to be set free. But not in the way they expected. The breaking point came on Thanksgiving 2023. We were at Willowbrook, as always. Gloria had invited her entire social circle, 40 people for dinner, all of them wealthy, all of them watching me like I was entertainment. During cocktails, I overheard Gloria talking to a group of her friends near the fireplace. Natalie's still around, yes. Jonathan is too soft-hearted to end things, but we all know it's only a matter of time. Once the children are a bit older, he'll find someone more appropriate. There's a lovely girl from the Harrison family, excellent bloodlines, beautiful manners. Much more suitable. She said it casually. Like I was a piece of furniture that would eventually be replaced. I walked over to her. I smiled politely. Gloria, can I speak with you privately for a moment? She looked surprised but followed me to the library. I closed the door. I heard what you said about the Harrison girl. Gloria's expression didn't change. Eavesdropping isn't very becoming, Natalie. Neither is planning your son's next marriage while he's still in his current one. I'm simply being realistic. You've lasted longer than I expected, I'll give you that. But we both know this isn't permanent. Jonathan married you to rebel against me. Once that thrill wore off, so did his interest. You're a placeholder. You always have been. I looked at this woman, this cold, cruel, privileged woman who had spent 10 years trying to break me. You're right about one thing, Gloria. This marriage is ending. But not because Jonathan is leaving me. I paused. Because I'm leaving him. Her face went pale. Excuse me. I'm filing for divorce in January. My lawyer is already preparing the papers. I'll be taking the children, our custody agreement is already drafted. And I'll be taking approximately half of the assets acquired during our marriage, which, as it turns out, is mostly my money anyway. Gloria's mouth opened and closed. For the first time in 10 years, she was speechless. You see, Gloria, while you were busy calling me a starter wife, I was building a $40 million company. While you were planning Jonathan's next wedding, I was planning my exit strategy. While you were treating me like I was temporary, I was making myself permanent, just not in your family. I walked to the door. Enjoy your Thanksgiving dinner. I'm taking the children back to Manhattan tonight. You can tell Jonathan whatever story you'd like. I'm sure you will anyway. I left Willowbrook that night and I never went back. The drive to Manhattan took 2 hours in holiday traffic. Madeline slept in her car seat. Oliver asked me 3 times why we weren't staying for pie. Because sometimes, sweetheart, you have to leave a place that doesn't feel like home. He accepted that answer with the easy wisdom of a 4-year-old. Children understand more than we give them credit for. I called my lawyer from the car. Then I called Lauren, my maid of honor, my best friend, the woman who had warned me about Gloria's white dress 10 years earlier. I'm filing for divorce. There was a long pause. Then, I'll be there in an hour. She drove from Pennsylvania that night, the same 6-hour drive she had made for my wedding a decade earlier. She arrived at my apartment at 2 in the morning with coffee and tissues and a look that said I told you so but was too kind to speak it aloud. What finally did it? She asked. She called the Harrison girl suitable. She said Jonathan would find someone more appropriate once the children were older. And I realized, I've been waiting for 10 years for Jonathan to choose me. He's never going to. He doesn't know how. His mother took that ability from him before I ever met him. Lauren nodded. So what now? Now I choose myself. The divorce was finalized in March 2024. Jonathan didn't contest much. He was too stunned, too confused, too accustomed to other people making decisions for him. When my lawyers presented the financial disclosure, showing that my company was worth more than his trust fund, he actually laughed. Not a mean laugh. A bewildered laugh, like he was hearing a joke in a language he didn't speak. I didn't know, he said during our final meeting. About the company. About any of it. I know you didn't. You never asked. My mother said, your mother said a lot of things. You believed all of them. That was your choice, Jonathan. For 10 years, you chose her version of me over the real me. Now you get to live with that choice. He didn't argue. He just signed the papers that I got the Manhattan apartment. I got primary custody of Madeline and Oliver, with generous visitation for Jonathan. I got to keep every share of Vance and Associates, which was mine to begin with. And I got something else, something that wasn't in any legal document. That I got my self-respect back. Gloria, I heard through mutual acquaintances, had a breakdown after the divorce was announced. Not because she was sad about losing me, she was sad about losing control. For 10 years, she had been the puppet master, pulling strings, manipulating her son, keeping me in my place. And then one day, the puppet cut its own strings and walked away. She tried to reach out to me once, about 6 months after the divorce. A handwritten note on her monogrammed stationery. Natalie, I think we should talk. There may have been misunderstandings on both sides. For the sake of the children, perhaps we can find a way forward. Gloria, I didn't respond. There were no misunderstandings. Gloria understood exactly who I was from the moment she met me. She just didn't expect me to prove her wrong. That it's been a year now since the divorce was finalized. Madeline is 7. Oliver is 5. They're happy, healthy, and adjusting well to having 2 homes. Jonathan sees them every other weekend and 2 weeks in the summer. He's a better father now than he was a husband, surprisingly. Without his mother's constant presence, without the pressure to perform the role of the perfect Ashworth son, he's actually present with his children. I don't hate him. I did for a while, during the worst of it, during the years when he stood silently while his mother eviscerated me. But now I mostly feel sorry for him. He was raised to believe that his family's approval was more important than his own judgment. He never learned how to choose. That's not an excuse. It's just an explanation. Vance and Associates is thriving. We hit $60 million in revenue last year. We've won industry awards. We've been profiled in major publications. And every single article mentions that I started the company while married to a prominent New York family, without ever mentioning the Ashworth name, because they don't get to be part of my story anymore. Gloria is still in Greenwich. Still hosting garden parties. Still telling everyone who will listen that her son's marriage ended because I was mentally unstable, and never appreciated what she was trying to do for me. Let her talk. Her words don't hurt me anymore. I have my children. I have my company. I have my name, my real name, the one I was born with, the one that means something because I made it mean something, and I have the memory of Gloria Ashworth's face when I told her I was leaving her son. That memory keeps me warm on cold nights. Last month, I received an invitation in the mail. Thick cream paper, embossed lettering, the Ashworth family crest in gold foil. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Jonathan Edward Ashworth III and Cecilia and Harrison, the Harrison girl. The one with excellent bloodlines and beautiful manners. Gloria finally got what she wanted. I threw the invitation away. Then I fished it out of the trash and pinned it to my bulletin board in my office, not out of bitterness. Out of gratitude, because every time I look at that invitation, I'm reminded of what I escaped. A life of being suitable. A life of meeting Gloria's standards. A life of waiting for a man to choose me while his mother chose for him. Cecilia Harrison can have that life. I hope she enjoys it. I hope Gloria treats her better than she treated me, but I doubt it. Gloria doesn't want a daughter-in-law. She wants an audience. My children met Cecilia last month. Madeline reported that she was nice but kind of boring, and that she let Gloria pick out her dress for dinner. Oliver said she smelled like too many flowers. I told them to be kind and give her a chance, but privately, I smiled. My children already know the difference between people who choose for themselves and people who let others choose for them. That's my real legacy. Not the company, not the money, not the Forbes profile. My children, they will grow up knowing that their mother walked away from a life of luxury because it came at the cost of her dignity. They will grow up knowing that success means nothing if you can't look at yourself in the mirror. They will grow up knowing that the people who love you don't ask you to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Madeline wants to be a marine biologist. Oliver wants to be a chef. I have no idea if those dreams will stick or change 1,000 times before they're grown, but I know this, whatever they will become it on their own terms. Not Gloria's terms. Not anyone else's terms. Their own. That's what I'm giving them. The thing no one gave me. The thing I had to fight for, bleed for, build from nothing. Freedom. If you're listening to this and you're married to someone who won't choose you, who lets their family treat you like a placeholder, like a problem to be solved, like something temporary, I want you to know something: you are not temporary. You are not disposable. You are not a start or anything. You are a complete person, with your own worth, your own potential, your own future, and the people who can't see that, they don't get to define you. They don't get to limit you. They don't get to decide when you stay and when you go. That decision belongs to you. Only you. I stayed for 10 years because I thought I could prove Gloria wrong by being the perfect wife. But the truth is, I proved her wrong by leaving. By building something of my own. By refusing to let her son's silence become my prison, The woman who called me the starter wife is now watching her son struggle to date in his late 30s while his ex-wife builds an empire. The woman who wore white to my wedding is now explaining to her society friends why the unsuitable girl from Pennsylvania was featured in Forbes. The woman who said I was temporary is now realizing that I was the most permanent thing that ever happened to her family, because my children carry my values. My work ethic, my resilience, not her bloodlines. Not her money. Not her name. Mind that if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the people who call you temporary are often the ones who are most afraid of how permanent you might become. Gloria Ashworth wore white to my wedding. I wore red to my divorce celebration, and I looked spectacular.